Hey there, welcome to today's video. I'm going to be talking about using Schema to avoid internal competition, aka beating keyword cannibalization between articles. Just a reminder, I'm Ashley Pierce. I'm the founder of Future State Media, and we help creators navigate the sometimes complex world of SEO in their journey to grow their traffic and audience. So, where was this inspired from? It was a question that popped up around how do I avoid two articles with very similar keywords from competing with each other in Google? It's quite a common theme, quite an established terminology in keyword cannibalization. We tend to use the terminology internal competition because, in essence, what we're talking about is two articles competing with each other for a page one slot in Google. A few solutions were suggested, which I don't disagree with, but here we go with some of the solutions that were mentioned in the Facebook group when we were talking about this. Just write the articles, Google will figure it out. Make sure the titles are different, but what if Google ranks you for both? So is this even a problem? Look at the search intent and serve those searches search intents directly, don't overlap. These all had a bit of a theme. They were lacking definitive and clear direction. I have a tendency, considering that we've seen a lot of internal competition, resolved a lot of internal competition for the content sites and e-commerce sites that we've performed SEO on, tending not to move towards the just write the articles and let Google figure it out. And we don't tend to see a great deal of the examples where Google ranks you for both. That tends to be, if that is the case, it tends to be a short-term thing where they're doing a click-through rate test, and then they'll decide which one they're going to leave on page one. Unless you're dealing with a really, really, really long-tail term where they're willing to put two results from the same website within the SERP. And in those cases, even we tend to see that it's more authoritative sources and more authoritative websites that they'll do that with. There are examples of where they do it with smaller sites, but let's not get hung up on that. So I lean towards the looking at the search intent and serve those search intents directly, don't overlap. So if one was a review of a company with a name, which I think in this example that it was, but that name of the company could also be like an activity that you perform, and therefore you're looking for, in this case, it was like hiking routes versus a company that did like guided hiking activity, and there was like one word different between the two keywords. Ultimately, there is different search intent there. One person is looking for routes that they can go and perform hikes on themselves, and the other is looking for a review of a company. So yes, you can change the titles. You can have very descriptive titles of what it is that you're a comprehensive review of. Versus top 10 hikes to take in an area. So they would be differentiated from a title basis. But there are other ways to be completely unambiguous with Google on what it is that you intended. I'm going to cover off one of them, which is around putting about schema into the into your article, and there was another solution I offered up, which was around adding review schema, but I won't cover that in this video. That will be something that I'll add in a separate time, because that's actually applicable to a whole range of things that we do on our blogging sites. Examples of where this problem occurs then, because I just gave you that example around the hiking routes and the hiking business. To businesses you're reviewing that have the same name as a place or activity, that was the classic example there. More for your travel blogging specific problems, a city or place that you're writing about isn't a unique name, and could be one of a number of places in the world. New York State versus New York City, Venice in the States versus Venice in Europe. And there are a number of things like this where cities, states, and places all have very similar, if not the same name, and therefore actually you want to be very definitive to Google. I'm talking about this specific place, not this other place. And hell, you might go and write about both places on your blog, and actually both articles are pretty much identical titles, and there's no differentiation to be had because you're providing a list of things to do in a place, or best camping sites, or something like that. There's also examples of where there's duplicate meanings to a word, or the shorthand version of the word is an incomplete representation of the thing. So if somebody was going diving, the typical like colloquial understanding of that would be that they were going scuba diving, but diving actually has a number of things that it can be associated with, including diving off of boards into pools, skydiving, and all sorts of things. So actually, there's a level of being unambiguous in that sense as well. You'd think, oh, Google's smart enough to work it out. It is, but the more you make Google think, the more it's costing Google to understand you. The less you can make it cost for Google to understand you, the better, because they're more willing to invest in you. They can spend that money understanding more things about you, as opposed to trying to work out something that essentially a machine it will struggle to. So yeah, I gave that example, and I'll give you that as another reinforcement there in a visual. New York is a state, New York is a city. So top 10 things to do, or top 10 places to stay in New York. Yes, Google would probably figure out the city part of the aspect, but actually, if you wanted to write something at a state level, bringing some schema into the mix would help you overcome the problem and be definitive about the fact that you are actually talking about either the city or the state. The content on the page, of course, is important, because if you were talking about New York City and you were talking about the various landmarks in New York City, that would be a real good indicator to Google that you were talking about the city and not the state. And equally, if you were talking about places within the state, that would be an indicator that you weren't talking about the city. But Google has to use its thinking brain, its thinking energy, to figure that stuff out. Whereas making things ambiguous means the processing power to understand your page and rank it costs less. So yeah, the solution can be straightforward, but it can be a little bit tech oriented as well. And it depends on which plugin you've got on your site. And this might even push you towards going towards our chosen sort of approved plugin. RankMath Pro, to be clear, not the free version, makes this really easy. You just enable schema, which is the structured data, and that basically switches on this ability to add schema to your website with very little effort, extremely little effort. And here's the exact example, and I'll link up to the RankMath Pro guide in the description for this. It's as easy as basically a toggle button on a text link. So you can set the about or set to mentions. This adds information to your pre-existing article schema that RankMath is inserting into the top of your page anyway. Recommendations around what link you should be, what you should be using as your reference. Wikipedia is the go-to, or Wikidata. I'd stay within those two boundaries. Google kind of basically pulls its information from there. There are other places it pulls from, but if you wanted general guidance, stick with Wikidata and Wikipedia. In most cases, the pages are in existence for you to state unambiguously which one you're referring to. It basically, by highlighting the text link, adding a link, text link in, and setting to about, that'll add into your schema that I'm talking here about, in this case, New York City. Yoast doesn't work this way. And I know we've probably got some kind of like, maybe Yoast fans, but maybe people who've like grown up over the course of the last 10 years, and Yoast is kind of just embedded into the way that you do things. And you can never turn your back on those Yoast traffic lights. I can kind of get it, but at the same time, RankMath is increasingly compelling. But if you wanted to get this maybe as a quick fix on a couple of articles, because you see this as potentially being a problem that you're facing on your blog right now, actually you can insert some code onto the page using the block editor. You can also do this using the classic editor, but if you're still using the classic editor, I'd really encourage you to step up into the world of the block editor. Essentially, you use a custom HTML block and you insert the code yourselves. And that sounds really, really scary if you're thinking, I need to write code. I am going to link up to this code, I'll basically embed this video on our website, and you'll be able to grab the code, copy and paste from there. This is a very small snippet of code. It's standalone. I'm not replicating everything that's in the article schema that already gets put into the page by Yoast, which causes a slight inconvenience, which I'll come on to next. But essentially, this is it. You don't need to understand this, but you do need to see the main constructs here. The name is the article title, and then the thing that I'm trying to define in this case is a Kolsch, a beer. And then I'm going to link up to the Wikipedia page that is unambiguously about Kolsch beer. And that tells Google that this is all about Kolsch. And it turns out, I didn't realize this before using this as an example, but Kolsch is an ambiguous term. And it's an unintended, almost perfect example of why schema is important. But yeah, the idea that you could get the beer and the artist confused, that might be a difficult one. Not to everyone's taste. I suppose that could be an applicable statement, whether it's an artist or a beer. But yeah, Wikipedia recognizes that Kolsch is an ambiguous term and therefore seeks to clarify that ambiguity, and by providing individual pages and a page that shows that you could be talking about one of these things, which is really important, really interesting, because it kind of just shines a light on the fact that this is an issue. Coming back to that imperfect thing, that doing it with Yoast and adding that custom code into the bottom of each of the articles, it does mean that essentially you get two instances of article schema on your page. One is the full complete article schema that's inserted by Yoast automatically. It has your title and all the other information that's relating to it, the meta, essentially. You're pulling some information from the meta into the schema. This other little bit of article schema that you're going to put in is just defining the about part of the article, which means that you, like I say, you have two instances of the schema. Neither are erroring, but both can be read and both can be rendered. So this isn't really a problem. It's really not best practice to have things like this not nested. You'll hear things referred to as nested schema. But there are plenty of websites out there that run with non-nested schema. We've operated on Shopify for a number of years, and the schema that gets implemented by various plugins and apps in that universe is absolutely a mess. So this is the kind of like least of your trouble. If Shopify websites can rank from an SEO perspective, then this kind of duplication of article schema, where we're filling in a gap in the information but adding the article schema in again, it isn't a big deal. So if you're looking for a quick fix and you're sat there thinking, oh yeah, I've got those two articles that probably compete against each other because Google doesn't know when to rank for what, but you've got Yoast, you're using Yoast, you might not have to make the leap over to RankMath and bring all of your settings across and all that sort of thing, which by the way is really easy because they have an importer that's designed to pull information directly from Yoast into their ecosystem. But if you want to stick with the Yoast and you can't be doing with the fact that there is a change that would need to happen from your side, you can just use that code-based solution. Like I say, I'll link you up with the code that you can edit for your purposes and put on your website in the description, or I'll put it at least on the website and a link in the description to that. If you're looking for a more long-term one-up on the competition, and there's no reason why you can't add this type of schema to be completely unambiguous on every single one of your articles, to be really definitive and make it really easy for Google to understand, then just go with RankMath all the way. And that is kind of, to be honest, my recommendation. But I also understand that there's some momentum to overcome there potentially with whole websites built around the idea that Yoast is the center of the tech stack. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Using Schema to avoid internal competition. It's not the only thing that's going to prevent the internal competition. It's just another piece of equipment, it's another technique you can use to be completely unambiguous to Google. Of course, keep writing the differences, keep making sure the titles are different and things like that. But the Schema is a really interesting way of speaking directly to the machine, and let the machine unambiguously select which thing you're talking about and completely understand your content. So yeah, that should help you overcome some of that keyword cannibalization that you might encounter or might be encountering right now. If you are encountering that right now, please do let me know if you're implementing this solution. I'm more than happy to run it through the Schema validator for you and provide some feedback as to whether you've achieved that the implementation correctly, or whether you have any insight on what I might have done if from that side. No obligation, nothing like that. Just interested. We're here to help. You or my team can take a look at that. And yeah, so if you like this kind of content, please remember to like and subscribe. I will be producing more stuff like this. I'll try and avoid the stuff that relies on the requirement of code, of course. And this is all about making sure that we're very creator centric, and we're focused on building that traffic and audience and overcoming what can be really technical jargon and terminology and challenging stuff from an SEO perspective. But yeah, thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.